I'm going to talk today about something that I grapple with myself, and it's it's pretty hardcore. We're going to have I'm going to have some hardcore Dharma today, really. And so it's like I said, the best the best thing I can say is you probably won't remember it. So just if you get upset by what I'm going to say, just remember that by this afternoon you won't remember. When you're going home tonight, you say, well, "What was he talking about? What did he say?" So how to get into this? I want to go back, and I kind of threatened on Sunday. If I was this was so this was in the Dharma talk last Sunday. A lot of you were there. I was talking about the teacher at the Forest Refuge who told this story about becoming aware of self-loathing. She was at a one retreat, and it was a wonderful story, and I shared that with you all last Sunday, and then I wrote about it in the Dharma Corner, which a number of you have read. I think some of you don't get the Dharma. Some of you don't even know what the Dharma Corner is, do you? Do you? It's a little essay that I write every week and send out. It's called the Dharma Corner. All you have to do is email me, and I'll send it to you. So so as I was listening to her tell the story, and I don't think she was aware, she repeated it. I mean, it's such an important moment in her experience as a meditator. She referred back to it more than once, like in different weeks, a kind of like, and it occurred to me that she wasn't necessarily even aware that she was referring back to it. I mean, maybe she was, but it was clear that this experience was one of the most profound experiences that she'd ever had. And so as I'm listening to it, I am just smiling inside, right? Because I had the same experience about 15 years ago in Temecula at one of our retreats. Dan was there. So I mean, I resonated with what she was saying so much, and so as I said, I told the story on Sunday, but and I said that I would remind everybody of my own experience. So okay, so we're in Temecula, and we used to have 7-day retreats. We had like 2 or 3 a year, and so we're having this 7-day retreat, and Dan was there. I think nobody else in the room was there. And my room was in the main meditation hall. Then they had rooms, sort of a whole a complex. But so I had this little room. So my job, since I was right there my job was to open the door, right at 5:30 or 6. So I would get up and open the door, and about 20 minutes later, Dan and Beverly would be there to fix the coffee, right? Black as, right? Jet black coffee. As I said, it would put hair on your chest. Easily. Some of us would think, they could make it just a little bit less strong. So one morning I got up, and it's like about 5 days. It's towards the end of the weekend. I got up, and it's time to go and open the door so that Beverly and Dan can come in. So I get up, and I'm standing there, and the thought comes into the head, what's the point of doing this? They're not getting it. They're still just, they're not getting it. They're not understanding any of it. So what's the point of doing it? That was the thought that came in. And it was really serious. I mean, it was not, it was, I was really, there was like just this moment of like discouragement, I mean, even by then we'd been doing this for a long time. And there was this moment where it's just like, I'm just doing this. That's 15 years ago. Can you imagine what I would say now? But it was really, really strong thought. What's the point of doing this? And it really was basically, I would say, being a teacher, trying to teach Dharma. So I stood there, and suddenly there was this awareness that was just a thought. It was like the heavens opened. I cannot. It doesn't translate, does it? I don't think it translates, really. It's like, so I say that suddenly I saw that it was just a thought. This is exactly what the teacher in Florence, she told, a similar story. Hers was just a thought of self-loathing. But to have that moment of seeing a thought as not you, there's no you in the thought. It's just an electric, it's like something, it's just like something that's emitted from the brain. Just to have that much mindfulness and awareness, that suddenly you see what is coming through your mind is what's coming through. It's just a thought. It's nothing but a thought. It's an extraordinary moment. It's like it's really probably a moment of enlightenment, to tell you the truth. It's like a moment of awakening. I don't walk around considering myself enlightened and or awakened. But it is an extraordinary moment. I cannot. Well, as I said, the teacher, as you could see the awe in her, on her face as she was telling about that it happened to her. So it's happened. Hopefully, it happens to everybody. So the moment that occurred to me, so I'm just standing there. What's the point of this? And by the way, as a therapist, I've had clients come in and say to me, "What's the point of living?" Come on, in other words, that thought of what's the point of this, trying to teach all these idiots, trying to teach these that's fairly benign. But that thought can go right down the road to what's the point of living, and then what would happen beyond that? Have you ever heard of suicide? Have you ever heard of someone killing themselves? I have. It comes from that thought. What's the point of this? What's the point of living? So in other words, the thoughts in our head can be fairly serious. They can ruin your life forever. Just a thought in your head. So when someone says to you, "I just saw," it's just a thought. They're saying it's extraordinary. Because you're never the same when you have that. You're never quite the same. You may somewhat forget it, maybe. Well, you will forget it. We all. But you're never quite the same because it has lost its sting. The way I put it, it's lost its juice. It's like a tree that's lost its sap. Right? A tree that's lost its sap ain't going to last. It's going to die. So I'm not so sure that, if you believe in reincarnation, which I don't disbelieve in it, but I'm not so sure that that's not a moment where something is permanently wiped out. Maybe not. So I'm standing there, and there's just this seeing. There's no victor. There's, that's, you can listen to this and you can imagine, say, like right, if you're Nicholas, if you're Dan, if you're Victor, or if you're Andrea. So you say, "Oh, I saw that it was just a thought." No. See, that's That's not an insight, right? I saw that it was just a thought. That's thinking, seeing, thinking, right? That's a thought, seeing another thought. Not a bad thing, by the way. I mean, in fact, I think it's a pretty good thing for a thought to see itself as being kind of without clothes. But the profound insight comes from what in Buddhism is called prajna, 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 which means intuitive wisdom. And intuitive wisdom doesn't have words. Intuitive wisdom comes from this profound silence that just knows. It just sees. It just knows. It doesn't think. So there was not this victor standing there in this moment saying, oh, what's the point? What's the point? I'm never going to teach Dan. He's never going to learn anything, for God's sakes. What's the point of doing this? All right. So there wasn't a thought, oh, my God, it's just a thought. No, there wasn't that. Because that would have been a personality. That would have been a victor. That would have been Brian. That would have been someone inside who thinks he's here. Most of you sometimes think that you're here. Well, I know I'm here. I'm sitting right on this cushion, right? I'm right here. Don't tell me I'm not here. I'll never forget Coey saying, right? If I'm not real, then who is this? He said. And, you know, I mean, the obvious answer is it's a body, for God's sake, and a mind. So there was not this verbal thought, oh my God, it's just a thought. There was just this noise. Just seeing that there was nothing in it. So it didn't have arms, it didn't have legs, it didn't have a face. See, thoughts actually have arms, legs, and face. When we're sitting there, you're thinking about, well, I've got to do this now. It's an imaginary you. It's an imaginary you. Just like Jung would say there's an empirical you. There's an empirical self. That's like the, moment by moment by moment by moment, that sense of agency. But then there's an imaginary you, and the imaginary you is this, I'm going to do this. I mean, we're thinking, and really there is an imaginary person. We imagine ourselves as we think, which is a huge problem. So in that moment, to see that imaginary you as being empty, absolutely empty. It wasn't bad news. It's like very often when we read about it, you say, oh my God, I'm empty? Well, that'd be the worst thing in the world. But the experience of it is the most wonderful thing in the world, because it's like, oh my God. It's a very good experience. So I stand there and sort of like naked. And so then, of course, the thinking mind always comes back. So out of that moment, there's sort of like silence, and I'm just standing there, just sort of like awestruck. And then came the thought. And we have a T-shirt that we sell in Long Beach, meditation. That was that thought. It's your mind, stupid. So that's where that slogan came from. It's the mind, stupid. Sometimes I think it's supposed to be, it's your mind, stupid, but I think that, does the T-shirt say it's the mind, stupid? Jeff, you made it a T-shirt. I think it's the mind, stupid. And of course, the thought was this clever victor who was, because back then it was like, as I said 15 years ago, it was not. I think it was coming from the Carville and Bagala's. It's the economy, stupid, right? It's the economy, stupid. That was the one slogan in terms of when Bill Clinton was running for president. And it did him very well, right? It did him very well. They were on point they never got off point. It's the economy, stupid, right? So they would not let the conversation change, right? I mean, if you got into a debate in terms of about Bush number one, and talk about different things, but they were very, very smart. They came back to it's the economy, stupid. That was the North Pole, the North Star. I think it's the mind, stupid, is the exact same thing. Now, we literally have had more than one person who's been so offended by that slogan. We've had one person who quit coming to Long Beach Meditation. Bless her heart, I felt so bad. She said, couldn't we say it's the mind, dummy? And then that didn't work. But she was so offended by that, say it's stupid. And I totally understood that. I mean, I kept trying to say, it's really a takeoff from the political thing. It didn't help. She just thought it was really putting people down to call them stupid. And nothing. It's universal. I mean, right? It's not like it's not like we're selecting a group of people and calling them stupid. It's like we're all stupid. And so I'm not trying to talk you all into accepting the fact that stupid, it's okay to call someone stupid. But I think maybe it's okay to call yourself stupid. Everything comes back to that. Everything comes back to that. Everything comes back to that. I don't expect you to understand that. I found myself working at the Forest Refuge, getting up, going through the day, going to sleep, getting up, day after day after same day, right? I mean, it's every day. It's just how many days are in 9 weeks? There was never a moment that was the same. It was astounding. It was astounding to experience. I kept thinking, so how do we do that? I mean, it's like you put yourself in the most boring situation ever, and suddenly you start seeing how nothing ever stays the same. It's amazing. So then we get in real life, right, where nothing is ever the same. It's just the opposite. Then we think it's always the same. It's a kind of a real upside down and strange thing. I don't think that made much sense what I just said. But so I'm getting up and I feel like shit. I feel like terrible and tired. And then I drag myself down to the meditation. I have the most transcendental sit, right? I mean, in other words, so the mind's saying, oh, this is going to be terrible. I just can't do it. And then instead, it's just this incredibly wonderful sit. So then like an hour later, I was thinking, oh my God, what a wonderful, so I can't wait to get back to the cushion. And it's a horrible sit. Oh my, it's horrible. So it's just up and down and up and down. And the mind keeps thinking it can predict a minute from now. It's astounding. I mean, I couldn't predict 5 seconds from now. And so, it's one thing to do that, like today, but do it for 9 weeks. Do it for 9 weeks. It starts really getting under your skin. You start seeing the mind that we call ourselves, because that's the truth of it. The person, it can't predict anything. It doesn't know anything. And yet, of course, we walk around as if we know. Well, I know what's going to happen. A moment from now. I mean, so I could fall over dead on the floor, right? Well, I know what's going to happen. It's true, and it's going to happen to all of us one of these days, right? Well, I'm fine, right? It's amazing. So, so this is the little turn where I wanted to go. So I remember, so Dan, who has graced us with his presence, Dan went to the Forest Refuge with me 7 years ago, 5 years, I don't know. It was a long time ago. And at the end of it, it was very interesting. So we met at the end of it. Of course, we came back. We came on the shuttle back to Boston. And so Dan said, he said, I can't depend on my mind at all. And so to some extent, he was having that same experience that I'm just describing. I mean, he just saw that, right? I mean, whatever, your mind never stops telling you things, right? Do you know that? I mean, it never stops talking to you. Well, this is what's going to happen. That's what this. It's a running commentary on existence, and it's never right. So Dan announced, you just can't depend on your mind for anything, So I thought that was fun. So I told him this after I came back from the forest refuge this time. But the real turn, and this is very difficult to kind of grasp. I was trying to explain it to you. I don't think I did a very good job. There's a wonderful poem by the third patriarch. It's like wonderful, my goodness. It's one of the most famous poems in all Buddhism. It was written 1,500 years ago, so long ago they're not really sure who wrote it. The third patriarch maybe, but they don't really know because it's hardly anything is known about him. You've all heard it. And it's extraordinary. So he says, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. The other translation of it, the great way is not difficult for those who do not. If you give up picking and choosing, that's the other famous way of describing it. The great way is not difficult if you will give up picking and choosing, right? Does anyone have any issue with picking and choosing? And picking and choosing means I don't want that, right? Not only picking and choosing, I do want this, but I do not want that. So this translation, which is also quite beautiful, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Now here's the third line, which is just right. I mean, I don't think anyone in this room, including myself, can lightly get over this line for many reasons. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Lordy, Lordy. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Now, some people will translate that as liking and disliking, right? And so we're not necessarily, I don't know if we want to pin that on him and not to say that he's saying, that love and hate are both absent. But he is certainly describing a mind that is not attached to loving or attached to hating, right? Now, it's one thing to love. It's another thing to be attached to what you love and cling to it, isn't it? Some of us know that. Make the smallest distinction, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, hold no opinions for or against anything. Now, is there anybody in this room who is without opinion, including me? Amazing. It's like if you read this poem and you say, well, just forget it. Just forget it. I mean, the great way is not for me. I mean, maybe there is such a thing. I mean, you're right. If you wish to see the truth, hold no opinions for or against anything. That means, I can't have the opinion that liberalism is a good thing and conservatism is bad, or conservatism is a good thing and liberalism is bad. I mean, I can't have that. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. See, it just goes on, doesn't it? When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect, like vast space, where nothing is lacking and nothing is in excess. So this goes on. This is like a 4-page long poem. It's very long, and it's worth really our studying. I'm not reading it to you right now for us to be studying it. I'm reading it for another tricky purpose. This is a famous one, by the way. I think most of you have heard this and maybe didn't know where it was from. Do not search for the truth. Only cease to cherish opinions. You ever heard that one? Do not search for the truth. Only cease to cherish opinions. Okay. This poem is translated. Now, this is kind of like the turn I'm trying to get at. I'm losing my mind. This poem is translated 2 or 3 different ways. You can see different translations of it. But this man has translated it as, can you all read that? Trust in mind. Trust in mind. Now, how the hell do we connect trust in mind with Dan's statement, you can't depend on your mind for anything, right? Does that sound like a little bit of a paradox? It does to me. Or Dan said it, but I said it also. Watching for 9 weeks. You can't depend on it for anything. So, the other part of that, in terms of the other, another Chinese teacher, his name is Wan Wu, or maybe we would say Wan Wu. So he said, when you can trust in your mind completely, and see through it to its true nature, you, the way he put it, there will no longer be any linkage, any leaking in any of your day's activities. Okay, so do you understand what he means by there'll be no leaking in the day? He's not talking about your plumbing, Dan. So what it means, if there be no leaking in your day's activity, it means that you won't get off, into thought. Your energy will, you won't get it off into thought. You won't get it off into, anything. It's like anything unskillful. Your energy will remain centered and focused. You remember what I was saying in the beginning? Some of you weren't here. I was saying that the Buddha. I just love that story. They described his attention as that when he heard a sound, he always turned his whole body. He never turned his neck separate from his body. He always turned his whole. So that would be a description of no leakage, right? I mean, that someone is so centered, so absolutely focused, moment to moment, that they're not separated from their body in any way. So I really, really studied that. I really grappled with that. When you can trust in your mind completely, and when you can see through, which is the way through, to its true nature. I kept saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? That if you can do that, if you can see its true nature, you will be absolutely present and focused moment to moment to moment. And at some point, I started linking that up to, it's your mind, stupid. I started linking that together, and saying, and it began to dawn on me, what is he talking about when he says, if you trust in your mind completely, number one. Well, as opposed to your imagined personality. That's what he's saying. Right? If you can't trust in your mind the deep seeing, what is it you can trust in? I mean, what would you trust in if you can't trust in your own essence? I mean, really, what is it you can trust in? Religion? Buddhism? Christianity? What can you trust in? Your partner? So, what would, if you see through, what is it you're going to see? What is the mind ultimately? They say it names everything, and no one can name it. Ultimately, what is it? You know the word I'm fishing for? It's empty. It's empty. So what would it be like if you trusted in your mind, if you just trusted in your mind, and you saw that it was empty? In other words, there was no Tom in it. There's no Linda in it, no Travis in it. What would that be like? Does that sound scary? Or does it sound like freedom? What is afraid of dying? What is afraid of death? What clings to this and that? What clings to what it loves and wants to push away what it hates? Is that the mind, or is that a conditioned mind? A small mind, something that's been created, that's been formed out of the mind. So, so I would bring myself back to this over and over and over, trying to sit with it and trying to watch it and trying to look at it. And it eventually became really my meditation object, trying to watch the mind, trying to be with it, trying to see it, trying to see what it is beyond when it's still and when it's not thinking, when there's not thoughts popping. So Nisargadatta says that when you see the mind, when you see what you are, the way he said it, he said you see that you're nothing, which is emptiness, and everything, which is luminous awareness. So I think that that's exactly what the Zen teachers was saying when he says, when you can see through to the true nature of your mind, when you can see through, so what it, through the thoughts, through this relentless kind of feedback loop that says, my name is blah, 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 my history is blah, blah, blah. When you see through that to the true nature of the mind, you see, first of all, that what? It's like, how many people think their mind is unique? My mind is really, my mind is really unique. I mean, it's mind. It's universal mind. It's consciousness that we each are part of. And then we separate out from that universality by memorizing and clinging to our own little story, right? My name is, right? My name is Nicole, and I was born in such, I'm this age. So you can read something. You can read something that is said by what I consider to be an enlightened being. And so when I read Nisargadatta, I do think that he was enlightened. And I have there's no doubt in my mind that a number of these old Chinese teachers who taught 15, 16, and 1700 years ago, they were just extraordinary. Okay, so you read someone who says, if you can trust in your mind completely and see through to its true nature, you can just add, it doesn't matter what the third sentence is. I mean, the payoff. Do you understand, right? If you can trust, I would say, if you can trust in the mind completely and see through to its true nature, you're on the road home. And you're certainly on the way to a mind without preferences. So what I'm trying to say to you is, it's a stretch for us to trust in the mind completely, because we want to trust in the self, don't we? And here's the piece that is hard to say to you. I really mean this. It's hard to say this because it's like taking candy away from children. We want to pretend that we're not our mind, don't we? Well, I'm Kathy, and I have a mind. My name is Janine, and I have a body, and I have a mind. How many people do not have that delusion in this room? I don't mean to be unkind. Do you see? In other words, when he says, if you can trust in the mind completely, really what he's saying is, if you can really grasp that you are your mind, and that's all you are. That's what the Buddha said. Now, Christianity says something quite different, and so does Judaism, and so does Islam. And I'm not going to, we're not going to get into comparing, but I mean, in other words, most religions say, oh no, you're not just your mind. Most religions say, you're also something else that's going to live forever. It's going to go to heaven if you're a good boy, Jeff. And the Buddha said, really talk about taking candy away from a baby. He said, no, you're a body and a mind. You're two processes. You're a body and you're a mind. Now, that's radical. That's radical. Do you understand how radical that is? It's totally against everything we've ever been taught in the West. Ever. Because in the West, from Plato on, we've been taught there's a eternal substance, right? We've been taught it's called eternalism, and it's really, and it's Judaism too, by the way. It's our Western mentality. And again, I have no question, problem with it. But it certainly is not the radical teaching of the Buddha, who said, number one, he taught impermanence, but he said, essentially, you are your mind, you are your body, that is, there's a body and a mind, and essentially, in essence, you are your mind. So then Wan Wu says, if you can trust in your mind completely and see through to its true nature, you're free. I think there's no question in my mind that that's true. So I'll say it one more time. What we cling to is this idea that I can't trust my mind. Do you see? Who is it who can't trust his mind? Who was it in Barry who couldn't trust his mind? It was the mind. It was the mind saying, I can't trust my mind. When you can let that go, when you can let that separation go, that there's an I in my mind, I mean, when you can just let it go, and don't try to figure it out, because if you try to figure it out, it's I trying to. But if you can let it go, just completely let it go, and Jan, and Vic, and just say, it's the mind, stupid. I mean, that kept bringing me back to reality. It was amazing. And I thought, I will have lived and died, and perhaps I said one intelligent thing in 70 whatever years or 80. It's the mind, stupid. I don't think there's anything truer. I don't think there's anything truer than that. You can drop the word stupid if you want to. It's the mind. It's the mind. And when you can trust it, what you're thinking is your mind. What you're feeling is your mind. What you're seeing, what is seeing right now? Is it you? Or is it your mind? What is hearing? What is processing? How many people in this room right now are processing words from Victor? I mean, raise your hand, right? It's your mind, stupid. That's what's processing it. What's so awful about that? What's so horrible about that? Oh, well, that's terrible. You're accusing me of being a mind. That's what we would really, if we could really say it. You're accusing me of just being a mind? Well, how dare you? Well, what's so awful about that? Well, I'll tell you what's awful about that. I'm more than my mind. Oh, excuse me, I didn't realize that. So what are you? Well, I'm what? A soul? It's fine. I don't want to put that down. But it certainly is not what the Buddha taught. And it isn't my experience. It's not my experience. There's something ultimately so freeing about it. And I think also, I don't know how to say this. It's connected to everything, and in some way it really truly, it wasn't born, so then it ain't gonna die. How could it die? It isn't born. So I think we should give me a grade on this, right? So I can figure out how. I mean, I don't know if I got a C or a C plus. I think that this is. It's like I said. It seems to me that this is really. I listen to Dharma talks. I listen to the Dharma talks at the Forest Refuge, and we'll never have this on YouTube. It's all so Buddha light. It's all so light. And it's all so light. They don't talk about the fact that they don't talk about emptiness. So I did today. And I hope you'll just let yourself sort of taste it and consider it and truly believe that it is the great way. It is the path.